Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this live speaking session. To really open this session, first thing first, we want to convey our extremely greatest welcome to all the part of Ministry of Finance and our media partner, of course, that are Kemenq Muda and Fiskus Muda. Of FYI, Kemenq Muda and Fiskus Muda is a community that initiated by fellows at Ministry of Finance and Digit Taxation employees, which are its members have been reached thousands with young spirit to continue to grow, both organizationally and personally, to enhance our sustainability in Indonesia. So subsequently, I want to greet and say, Selamat Hari Uang, sigap hadapi tantangan dan tangguh kawal pemulihan. So, as the motto that I've mentioned before, I hope we all can have such a capability to face every single challenge, both nationally and globally. And the last part of our session, I would like to ask a member of Kemenq Muda and Fiskus Muda to stay tuned with us until this live speaking session will go to the end. And course will give you such a powerful appreciation. So stay tuned with us. To start our session tonight, I would like to welcome the founder of Votes Indonesia Changemaker Foundation, which is our one and only Farid Al-Firdaus. Kang Farid, the screen is yours.
Yeah. Welcome to everyone. I'm Farid, the founder of Votes Indonesia. And first thing first, I want to congratulate my partners who already graduates from batch 26. Yeah. And then also I want to welcome my family in the Ministry of Finance and general citizens who join us tonight. Okay. And I think I want to say good morning to my best friend, Jordan. I think it's around 8:45 in Kentucky time. And hopefully you had your breakfast and enjoy this session. And for your information, I have two things about Jordan. First, yeah, he was the man with the longest hair in my class, but not anymore today. Okay, he has a short hair right now. And then the second one, I want to tell you that Jordan has successfully engaged with professors and friends with his opinions, thoughts, and questions. He was so active in the class. And I think it's an opportunity to all of you from learning many things from Jordan tonight. Okay. And yeah, I think it's the short brief. It's the short speech or briefing from me. And once again, please enjoy the session, everyone. Like Captain Pete Michelle in Top Gun Maverick said, wait a sec, I wanna say something for all of you. Please be ready for that. Okay. Light on, let's turn and burn. Can you hear it?
Well, pretty clear, Kang Farid. It's totally clear.
Yeah.
It's a jet sound, right?
Yeah. Okay. Go on, Gane. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kang Farid, for your opening, such a warm opening. So, and before start the session, we're gonna show you Jordan's profile video. So, now let's watch this profile video together. So we're gonna help you to share the screen, or maybe Kang Farid will help you. If you like to go to the next slide, you can say just next. Okay. So please, Jordan, the screen is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again. everyone has said, my name is Jordan. You might have seen my name, William, come up earlier. That's my first name, but I like to go by my middle name, which is Jordan. And as you can also see in that picture, I have a lot longer hair. I decided to cut it all off a few weeks ago. Decided it was time for a new look. So with the shorter hair now, but still the same me. So yeah, let's go on to the next slide. So a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, some of my education, some of my work experience, and then what I like to do for fun when I'm not working or not in school. And then I'll tell you a little bit about just some things that I think might be helpful for you all as you all are, learning English or maybe have interest in maybe potentially traveling to the U.S. For at some point. And then also want to talk about a little bit about what I do for work and how I care about cities and housing and building better communities. And hopefully I can give you all a little bit of insight into that as well. So like I said, name is Jordan. I'm 28 years old. I provided a little bit of a map for you all that might not know the geography of the U.S. as well. I'm originally from Tennessee, which you can see is that second X mark in the map. I'm from a little town in a little rural country mountain town called Newport. That's where I grew up, and that's where most of my family is. I first came to Kentucky to go to Transylvania, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But that's that first X. That's Lexington in Kentucky. That's where me and Fareed live now. And then also that third X in South Carolina. That's where Clemson University was. So I spent 2 years in Clemson. So you can see a little bit of the different places that I've lived at. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, so I have an older brother and an older sister, and I now have 2 nieces, so they're really fun to be around. And then you can also see me and my dog Molly, who I love very much. You might even see her run around here at some point, or you might hear her barking in the background. Go on to the next slide. So yeah, a little bit about my education. So I grew up in Tennessee, but wanted to go to a school that was maybe a little bit farther away from Tennessee, just to experience something a little bit different. So I went to a small university called Transylvania University. It's a small liberal arts school. There's only about 1,000 people that are there annually. So it was a really small, close-knit environment where I got to know a lot of my friends and a lot of my classmates really well, and then got to know my professors and the staff really well. I really enjoyed the smaller class sizes. I don't like taking those big classes with, hundreds of people sitting in a big auditorium. I like being closer with my professors and friends that I can kind of have those really good discussions and really good conversations with. So I had a great 4 years for my Bachelor of Arts degree, which I got in history. Though I don't really work too much with history now, I always found history really interesting and really fascinating. I thought it was always a great way to learn about people and just the way that we've changed and modified and done things differently over the course of time. So I was there for 4 years and I graduated. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do for a job or for my career. So I decided to go back to school for a little bit longer. I got my master's degree in city and regional planning from Clemson. So like I said, Clemson is in South Carolina. So it's a couple-hour drive away, both from Lexington and from my hometown in Tennessee. So this was a really cool experience. It was a much bigger school, so kind of had the small school experience with Transylvania and now the bigger school experience with Clemson. There also met a lot of really great people, and we really figured out and got to the bottom of the ways that our cities and our communities really develop. I think that's a really important way to think about our world and think about improving people's lives really kind of boils down to where people live and where people work and where people, have their families, where they put down roots. And there's lots of different things that people don't always think about that kind of go back to the way that cities are designed that really affect people's lives, again, that they don't really think about. So that might be transportation, might have to do with certain types of infrastructure, might have to do with how much houses cost. So there's all these different things that go into planning and designing these really good cities and these really good communities. So I think I learned a lot about that. Then after that, I did go into the workforce and started working for a little bit. I've worked a few different jobs, which I'll talk about in a second. And then a little while ago, when we were all stuck at home during the pandemic with not a lot to do, I started thinking about what were the best ways that I could continue to grow, continue to improve myself, especially with all this time being stuck at home. And that's when I started to think about maybe going back to school. And that's when I heard about this really awesome Master of Public Administration program here at UK. So I started that last year, and hopefully we'll graduate this coming spring. So a little bit about my work experience. So after graduating from Clemson with my first master's degree, I started working for a housing developer. Their name was AU Associates, and they were based in Lexington, but they worked all over kind of the region. So they worked in Kentucky and Tennessee and some surrounding states as well. But working for them, one of my main jobs was to help find new places and new sites to build new housing communities. Now, we primarily worked in the affordable housing world, so we often built public housing or low-income housing for lower-income individuals. We utilized different public sources of funding, as well as private sources of funding to build these. Usually were apartment units, and we ended up building hundreds of units kind of all over the region, and provided a lot of affordable housing, good quality affordable housing to a lot of people that needed it. And that was my first experience kind of in the workforce. I call it kind of my first big boy job, where I really learned a lot about just communicating with people, starting projects, finishing projects, and all of the different types of logistics that go into those types of projects. So the next big job that I had was I began working with Kentucky Housing Corporation, and I worked there for about 2 years. So Kentucky Housing Corporation was the state housing finance agency. So in the U.S., that I'm sure you all might be aware of or might not be aware of, there's the federal government that has their own programs and their own financing, and then each of the individual 50 states also have their own state government and their own types of financing as well. So I worked directly for the state of Kentucky, the state of Kentucky government, specifically working on their housing programs. So here we administered a lot of different types of funding and programming for people that wanted to build or develop or just maintain different types of public housing or state-sponsored housing or affordable housing as well. So here I learned a lot about the financial underwriting. I learned a lot about the different ways that money works. I learned a lot about the different construction expenses that go into building and all the different logistics that go into building these types of projects. A lot of people think that once they get the money that they can just start digging a hole and start building a house. But that process from getting the financing all the way to finishing a project and moving someone into a new house is a long process, and there's lots of different things that you have to think about. And then recently, just about 2 months ago, I started a new job with the Department of the Treasury. So like I said, previously worked for the state of Kentucky, and now I work for the federal government of the U.S. So here at the Treasury Department, the Treasury Department is in charge of all finances for the U.S. government. So I work in financing, but I specifically work in housing financing still. So here we work with and manage a lot of different types of policies and programs that directly affect the costs and expenses that go into housing. So that includes multifamily building, so building like apartments, apartment complexes, but as well as single family housing, so people that want to buy or rent an individual home. We also work with a lot of different nonprofits or community banks or credit unions that work individually with people to help them finance that as well. As you all know, housing can be very expensive, but it is something that everyone needs. So we need to ensure that whatever type of housing you're living in is adequate and safe and can keep you comfortable, but it is also reasonably priced. That's something we're trying to work on at the U.S. Treasury Department. And then over the years, I've had a number of side jobs and odd jobs that I've done, maybe on weekends or during when I was an undergrad. I worked as a lifeguard at a pool. I've worked at a waiter at a restaurant. I've worked as like a cashier in a couple of different stores, a clothing store, an antique store, even though I didn't know very much about antiques. And I've also worked as like a dog sitter when people went on vacation and needed someone to watch their dog. I would watch their dog for them. So I've done a lot of different things over the years. So a little bit more about me. You can see some of the things I like to do. I like to play soccer and be outdoors and play lots of different sports. So there's a picture of me playing soccer from a few years ago. I did play soccer when I was in undergraduate school at Transylvania University. So that was really fun. I'll also play basketball, as well as I used to play American football when I was younger. I also enjoy playing baseball as well. So I like to be outside, whether that be just playing with my dog, walking around the neighborhood, exploring the neighborhood. Here in Lexington, we live close to a lot of great outdoors places. So we're, excuse me, we live in a city, but we're really close to some mountains. So I like to travel and go see the mountains and be out there and hiking those mountains. I also like to do some larger traveling, some international traveling. I've been to about 10 different countries so far and got to see a lot of the U.S. states as well. So that picture of me is actually in Switzerland. That's me skiing, which is a really fun experience I did a few years ago, and would definitely recommend if anybody is into skiing or just going to see the mountains. That's a great place to do it. What else do I like? I like watching new movies and new TV shows. This day and age, there's lots of stuff that's always coming out, whether it be on Netflix or in the theaters. So I definitely like to go see those new movies. Was a big fan of the new Maverick Top Gun movie. That was a really good one. Recently, I've been trying to become a better cook. Going out to eat all the time can get very expensive. So I've tried to become a better cook. Lots of different recipes that I've tried over the years. Some have turned out better than others, but I think I am getting better. And then, as you can see, I'm also a big Taylor Swift fan. I've seen her in concert a few times. I've always just been a big fan of her music. So I'm definitely a Swiftie. She got a new album coming out in a few weeks, so definitely excited to hear that coming up. So a few different things that I think might be important or just helpful for you all as you all continue y'all's journey. Some things that I've learned over the years, both that can be helpful if you're in school or if you're learning or if you're in the workforce. The first thing is the ability to adapt. So a lot of times you might be going into something with one plan or one idea, thinking that this is what you're going to do or thinking that this is what is going to work. A lot of times I have felt that same way, but very quickly I've learned that that idea that I had or that plan that I had isn't necessarily going to work once we start actually working on it. So that means you're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to change. You're going to have to change your strategies. You're going to have to change potentially who you're working with, potentially how much things are going to cost. Might have to change your overall direction on your overall plan. And that can be frustrating sometimes. But if you have a quick ability to move from one plan to another plan or one strategy to another strategy very quickly, I've learned that that can be very helpful when you're working on a project. It can help you finish a project that you might not have been able to finish from the start. Another thing that's kind of similar is a willingness to learn. As I've recently just started this new job, the Treasury Department, just a few months ago, I thought I knew a lot about housing, and I thought I knew a lot about housing finance. I thought I knew a lot about building communities and building these better neighborhoods, but I've quickly learned that there's a whole lot more to learn. And I found, not just in this job, but in previous jobs, you always need to be willing to learn. You're never going to know every single thing. You're never really going to be a perfect expert on everything. So always be open-minded and willing to learn new things, new strategies, new ideas, but also be willing to learn things that are a little bit out of the box. Here, just in these few months where I've worked for the Treasury Department, I've learned a lot about the other financial processes of the United States, whether that has to do with, U.S. Mint, which is who prints our money, all of the other different departments within the Treasury Department that deal with different types of finance. So I mainly deal with housing finance. So there's thousands and thousands of other people that work at the Treasury Department that I can learn from and learn new things from. And hopefully I can take those things and will help me become a better employee and a better public servant. So always be willing to learn new things. And then finally, excuse me, don't be afraid to ask questions. I know a lot of you might have heard this one before, and I know I've heard it a lot before, but it really is important. And again, just from experience where I've started a new job recently, it can be a little intimidating, and it can be a little scary to ask these questions. Sometimes when I ask questions, I feel like it can come off that I'm being dumb or that I don't know what I'm talking about. And obviously when I'm in a new position with new people, I want to come off impressive and come off strong and want to make these good first impressions with people. So sometimes I'm afraid to ask those questions. But it's also really important to ask those questions at the front end, especially if you're working on a project or working on something new, and get those answers that are really important up front, rather than waiting till the end where you didn't ask those questions and you end up falling behind on a project or doing something in the wrong way, or you took something in the wrong direction. I've had a few instances of those in past working experiences where I was given a task or I was given a project by a manager or one of my superiors, and I just said, okay, I'll do it. Even though I kind of had some questions in the back of my head about maybe some specifics or some different nuances, but I was too afraid to ask them. So I just went on with the project and did it how I thought it was supposed to be. And by the time I got to the end and I turned in the project or I completed the task, my manager or my superior was a little upset because it ended up going not the way that they wanted it to. But I could have avoided all that if I just would have been more open and willing to ask those questions at the front and at the beginning. So again, there are no dumb questions. There are no silly questions. So whether you're in school, whether you're working, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Yeah, so this final point, I just wanted to bring up a few things about kind of that I've learned over the few years about building housing and building these better communities, which is a thing I think everybody wants. Whether you're in the U.S., whether you're in Indonesia, or any part of the country, you want to live in a good neighborhood that you're proud to be a part of. And there's a few different things I think it's important to think about when we're living in these communities and building these communities that really make them great. So the first thing I like to think about is that cities and communities need to be accessible for all types of people. And I really want to emphasize all in all types of people. There are many different types of people that do many different things in their life. And they need to all have access to these cities, to these different types of housing, to these different types of businesses, and all the different type of things that go into a community. So that includes younger people or older people. It might include people that are single. It might include people that have larger families. It includes people from a wide variety of different backgrounds, of different work experiences. It includes people from different socioeconomic classes. So that includes lower income people, middle income people, as well as higher income people. And they also need to have accessibility to all the different types of community features and businesses in these communities. So making sure that there are many different types of businesses in the area, but as well as community features such as parks, schools, community centers, and all these different types of facilities. Another thing I like to think about is making sure that communities are walkable. So in the U.S., most cities are very car dependent because the U.S. is a newer country. A lot of its major development and a lot of its cities were built around either built around or built after cars started becoming really popular and really present. So that means a lot of things are built very far apart. So to get from one place to another place, the only way you can get to them is by driving a car. And that's is okay sometimes. Cars are very convenient, but a lot of times it's not the most convenient if you don't have a car or if you don't want to drive. So in the US, we're really trying to start thinking about how we can build cities that are a little more compact and a little more closer together, and how we can get people from one place to another without using just cars. So if people want to walk somewhere, they should be able to walk to somewhere. Another thing that I work on specifically here with the U.S. Treasury Department is access to capital. So really everyone needs access to those important finances, whether you want to be building a new home or helping improving your existing home, or whether you want to start a business or start a new plan or just really do anything that can improve your community. We really all need to have access to that sort of financing. In the US, as I'm sure in other places, that's not always the case. There are many different types of banks and different types of financial institutions, but they have a lot of different restrictions on the type of money they can give out and who that money can go out to. So one of the things that we're working on at the Treasury Department is making sure that everyone, no matter your background, no matter your socioeconomic status, no matter where you live, what region or what state or what community you live in, you have access to that type of funding. Another thing that's really important for cities is the affordability of the cities. Again, as I'm sure you all know, housing is very expensive. both in the U.S., but I'm sure where you all live as well. We need to do a lot of different things to ensure that these cities, not just housing, but everything, a part of these cities, remain affordable and that people can afford them and afford to live in these places. And then finally, like I've talked about kind of throughout these few different topics, the importance for cities to be diverse. In the U.S., I'm sure with other places as well, oftentimes different neighborhoods or different communities or different sections of a town can often become segregated by different types of people. So maybe in one part of town, only primarily white people live on this side of town, or maybe on another side of town, only poorer people or low-income people might live on the other side of town. And that's no way to really build strong communities. Everyone needs to live together and close to each other. So younger people need to be able to live next to older people. People with families need to live next to people that are single. Lower income people need to be able to live next to people that are of higher incomes or middle incomes. And people of different race and ethnic backgrounds also need to be able to live close together. That way we could really build these strong communities, be able to share with each other freely and safely. And when that happens, those are really overall the best types of communities. So that's pretty much kind of my talk today. I hope that you all have been able to learn a little bit. And I've had a really great time talking with you all. Again, this is such a cool organization.
I just realized something, Jordan. I mentioned the Frederick's session, and then Tiani, and then now you. All of you have more than one master's degree. I mean, at least two, right? And fun fact from us as the Indonesian people, it's not easy to accomplish one master's degree.
Right.
Right? Since searching for the scholarship, right? And then maybe family concern, or maybe the difficulty of the course, because each course or maybe master has its difficulty, right? But we are so proud of you. We are amazed that you are accomplishing the second master's degree right now, public administration, right? So my question is, maybe for you, what's your motivation to take the master's degree to another master's degree? Maybe you can explain.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably started about 2 years ago. Like I said, when we were all kind of stuck at home during the pandemic. I think a lot of people, or at least I did, started thinking about kind of where I wanted my life to go. I had a lot of time at home, so I had a lot of time to think to myself. I lived alone, so I had my own place. So it did get a little quiet and lonely sometimes. So lots of times to think. So I really started to think about where I wanted my life to go, where I wanted my career to go. And I really wanted to continue to better myself, continue to grow, and started exploring some ways that I could potentially do that. Had all this time on my hand being at home, so I really wanted to use that time efficiently. So that's when I started to hear a little bit about the public administration program at the University of Kentucky. I saw that they had classes that were in the evenings, so I could continue to work full time, but then go to classes in the evening. They also had some online classes, so that had added a lot of bit of flexibility. And then the cost of it was pretty reasonable, or at least to my situation was reasonable. I ended up receiving a scholarship that ended up paying for a lot of it, and then I had some assistance from my employer, Kentucky Housing Corporation. They were really excited about me continuing my education, so they were willing to help pay for some of the expenses as well, which was really helpful. So overall, I think I wanted to do it, this second program, again, just to continue to grow and continue to learn, and continue to become kind of a better employee, a better servant, and to help continue to build these better communities. And it just kind of all fit together with my work experience, the time I had, as well as the finances. Um, so it all kind of worked out just perfectly all together.
All right, Jordan. So the lesson learned here is our future is in our hand, right? And to be a better person, to get a better future. So it's like the responsibility of us. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for a very wonderful explanation, Jordan. And I have a question for you. As mentioned before or previously, you have several work experiences, but in 2022, you decided to become a government officer. What drives you to do so? What is the motivation? And also, do you have any career planning in the future, like 3 years from now or maybe 5 years from now as a government officer? Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, great question. I think some of my motivation was my experience working, in cities and with communities, specifically in the housing world. Excuse me. And the Treasury Department, specifically the federal government, is really kind of the top echelon of places to do that. Kind of the housing policy. So I saw that there was a job opportunity and a job opening. I definitely jumped right on it and I applied for it. It was kind of a long process that I go through a couple different interviews, a couple of different background check processes. The interesting experience, but I think another thing is that when you're working with communities and working in housing, I really think the best way to solve some of these issues that we're having, specifically with housing prices getting kind of out of hand, where again housing is really expensive. A lot of things that we do counteract some of those high prices, but it all comes kind of back to the regulations and the enforcement that are coming from the government to make sure that those prices are in check. So I've always been interested for working in the public sector, working for the government, whether that be at the state level or the federal level. I've always thought that if we're going to make positive change to our communities, they're really going to have to come from the public side. They're going to have to come from the government. So that was kind of my motivation. And thinking long term, it's kind of in the next 3-5 years, I think my plan would probably be doing something similar, working for the federal government, continuing to expand my knowledge and to expand, grow my experiences working in housing sector, where I continue to learn more and more about it, learn different things about it, of the other things that go into affecting housing as well.
Thank you very much. And actually, I am from the Treasury Department too in Indonesia, and the motivation motivates me a lot. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. First of all, I would like to say thank you for Jordan for making time for us. And thank you so much for the life lesson you share with us. Honestly, I really admire your work and also your achievement so far. What I want to ask is I've seen on the slide before that you have a lot of activities Can you share with us how did you manage your time to do plenty activities in the same time? And the second question is, I have seen that you have experienced a lot of jobs before. If I'm not mistaken, there were a cashier and waiter and a dog sitter and etc. Can I ask you in what age did you get your first job and what job it was? Thank you so much.
Sure, sure. We'll start with was when I was in high school, so I was probably about 15 or 16 years old. Was when I worked as a lifeguard. Um, so there's a was a big at our city park, the big park that we had in our small town. There was a big community pool that people could come to. So I was a lifeguard there. So I worked during the summers and on the weekends when I wasn't in school. And then some of the other jobs I started working when I was in undergraduate, getting my bachelor's. So I was in college. So I'd work either on the evenings or on the weekends. And then I worked as a waiter, or I worked as a cashier a few years ago at one of the stores. Again, that was just on the weekends, and it was just to help out. It was one of my friend's store, so I knew the owner, and he needed some extra help. And it was nice to just have some extra cash, a little bit extra money to supplement my income. So that was always really nice. But I stopped doing that recently, which has also been nice to have a little bit more free time. Um, Going back to the first question about kind of some time management and scheduling and making sure I have time for everything. I think it's really good, obviously, to just keep a calendar, whether it be, on your phone or whether you have like a actual like written calendar, just of everything that you want to do, your due dates for things that are coming up, whether that be school or work related, but also think it's important to put in time for your friends, whether you want to have maybe go have a dinner with one of your friends. I always make sure to put that on the calendar. Say, hey, on Tuesday, I'm going to go have dinner with Fareed, so I can know in advance in the future to make sure I don't plan anything on that day, so I can make sure that my time is spent with Fareed or whoever I want to spend time with. And I do the same thing with a lot of my other activities. So on Monday nights is when my soccer league happens. So on Monday nights is usually when I go play soccer. So I make sure that that's always on the calendar. And just doing different things like that. And always trying to think ahead, so example, I went to go see my dad last weekend, who still lives in Tennessee. So I drove down there, but that was on the calendar probably 3 or 4 months in advance. So I made sure that I wasn't gonna miss that. I made sure that that was on the calendar, then to make sure that I knew that my whole weekend I was gonna be spent with him and nothing else got in the way. So definitely, if you can think ahead, if you can maximize using one of your calendars, and making sure you're not blocking that important time off for the important things in your life, I think you can do lots of different activities.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. It's really useful for me.
Yeah. Thanks for Jordan about your thing that you just called to us. I'm so amazed to your achievements, and I know that you got your degree before, but you continue the next degree in the art projects in the art programs. And I know that your ambition absolutely big, but what the thing that I'm pointing out is about time management, like the question before about time management. But I want to ask about have you been sacrificed your educational program? I mean, you have a lot of activities when you studying about your program. And how could you manage it? I mean, when you got stuck about your study, you do there are things, but you feel you cannot maximize about your study. How could you manage it? Thank you.
Thank you. So when it comes to studying and maximizing, my study time, I do like to maximize my time on the weekends. So when I'm not working, whether it be like on Saturday afternoons or Sunday afternoons, that's when I do a lot of my studying. I try to do studying for the whole week because I know I'm going to be busier during the week. So that's when I try to do a lot of my studying when I'm not working. Also, I'll do some studying and some work during the week. But again, kind of like I talked about earlier, where I use the calendar and I blocked off time. I make sure to block off time specifically to study as well, whether I need to be reading something, whether I need to be writing something or doing some sort of answering questions. I again make sure I block time off on my calendar and my schedule to do that. And I try to be specific about what I need to do. So I'll block this time off to say work on this class, and then I'll block off a different set of time to work on writing a paper or doing different things.
Okay, so hi Jordan. I'm Mona. I'm from Foods. So I would like to asking you one question. Actually, this question that I always got from someone that how did you manage yourself when you have something to do, many things to do at once? Maybe you just like having your homework and maybe your test from government at once, and the deadline is in the same time. How did you manage that? Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a good question and something that kind of comes up pretty often with work. I always make sure to ask about due dates or when things are need to be turned in, or so I always know to make sure, say if I'm given a task and something is due in a week, that I make sure I spread that time out working on that evenly and don't wait till the last second to do it all and you cram it in the last second. I also make sure to ask if I'm at work and I have a few different tasks or a few different priorities. I ask my manager or my superior specifically what needs to take priority. So I always ask them to see what they have to say if there's something that I need to focus more of my time on, or focus more of my time more quickly on something to make sure that gets finished first. And with school, you can kind of think of it as the same way. There are some things that might be a little more important than other things. Obviously, all of your school activities are important, but sometimes you might need to prioritize a little bit. And then you do have to kind of manage both of those at the same time, both your work and your school. So I try to make sure that I keep work within my working hours, unless of course there's something major that I have to spend extra time on. And I try to keep my school during the schooling hours. So I try not to mix them too much. I think that's a good way to kind of block off my time, saying, this time is for work, this time is for school, or this time is for another activity.
Okay, thank you so much, Jordan, for the answer.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, host, and greetings, Jordan. And I saw this documentary movie in YouTube that told us story about many people in US are homeless. For a few people, they live in cars and stay on the parking lot like they use their car to go to work in the day, and then at the night they put a bed in the back and they sleep on it. And one of the cause why they live like that is they say that they couldn't afford to rent a house because they still have to pay the student loan, and the income from their job still not enough to pay their bills. So I want to know further about this phenomena and your point of view, since you are the employee of the Department of the Treasury, and also you have experience in housing market. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's lots of different nuances and lots of different parts to that question. And I don't know if I have, the perfect answer. I don't know if anyone has the perfect answer to solve all of those issues, but it's definitely an issue. With student loans, obviously one of the major ways that people have to pay for their schooling if they want to go that extra mile and get that extra education, they do often take out loans. And sometimes these loans do have high interest rates, so it means when you have to pay the loans back, they can get really expensive. There is some policy and some programs that are in the works to hopefully help alleviate some of those burdens, which will be really nice and really helpful. And hopefully those should come out pretty soon. But yeah, there are definitely people that are living in their cars. They might have a good job that pays them pretty well, but due to again, with housing prices these days and housing prices continuing to go up, oftentimes because there isn't enough houses, so the demand for housing is so high. Again, that's just going to help those prices go up and up and up, that they really have nowhere else to turn. Sometimes they'll just have to stay in their car. Sometimes they will move in with other people. So you might see, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 people all living together in a small place, just so they can save on rent or save those housing costs. It's really a tough situation. I think one of the first things that we can do to help alleviate some of that is, quite frankly, to build more houses. I know that's kind of a broad idea, but in the U.S., there's a lot of places that are skeptical about building more houses. They're skeptical about building like apartment buildings or these larger housing developments. They're afraid for whatever reasons. They think that things will get too crowded or too busy, too congested. So one of the things I think we really need to do is just build more and more and more and more of these houses, and all types of housing, whether that be, smaller individual homes or these larger like apartment buildings and everything in between. If we can do that, that means more people have a place to live, and hopefully that'll help bring that demand a little bit lower, and that can help lower our prices as well. But yeah, that's a great question and a difficult one to answer.
Okay. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Our time limitation. Maybe we have one more question from.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yoga. And hello, Mr. Jordan, and greetings to our coach and our leader, Mas Farid. Anyway, I'm from Bali in Indonesia. I hope maybe you have visited Bali, or I hope you someday can visit here. So I will use the cap just to make it more local. Anyway, my question is maybe quite personal and political, but anyway, I'm really curious and really wonder about these things. And the question is there any prohibition or any law in American? Is there any regulation or law in American government that prohibit or suppress the expression of employee political view? Like we know that in America they have two big party, and the poll of the the political poll is quite sharp there.
Mhm.
And as we know here in Indonesia, as a public servant, we forbid to express our political view. And a funny fact that in the contestation of the vote of the election, we are forbid to like the status of the comment or the posting of any candidate. It's so forbid here to have any political affiliation. And as you were a public servant, how was it in America? Is it forbid for you to express your political view? That's my
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Thank you.
That's a really good question. And there are some rules and some laws that govern what public servant employees can do and can say. So they are allowed to obviously participate in politics, whether that be voting. They can also donate. I think there's a limit, maybe a couple $100, whatever the max amount is. I don't know exactly off the top of my head. You can donate to some like political candidates or political organizations. You can participate in certain types of programming. So you can basically, go to your neighbor or, walk in your neighborhood and say like, hey, I support this candidate or this policy or this program. And you can help try to encourage people to vote in a certain way. You can do that. So it is allowed, which is I'm really grateful for. I keep up with a lot of different political things, and a lot of different political issues are important to me. So I'm thankful that I'm still allowed to do that and I have that freedom to do that. Now, there are some more restrictions, basically, of what you can do while you're in your position. So like when you're at work, like during your work day. So basically, if I'm in the office or if I'm working in the middle of the day, and then I try to advocate for a certain politician or a certain political position to another colleague or another person I work with, that might be considered a problem and I might be breaking one of the rules. Or if I go out into my neighborhood or out into the community and try to advocate for a position specifically as a member of the Treasury Department, the Department of Treasury, saying like, you should vote for this person because that's what's right for the Treasury Department. That's also kind of breaking the rules a little bit too. And then there's also some more rules about for the higher level people up. So the managers and the more higher level people, they have some more restrictions as well. But overall, we do have some freedoms and some abilities to engage in those politics. But it really depends on kind of how it's done. So there's some nuance to it. I remember when I first started this job with the Treasury Department, we had to go through this whole training and orientation that told us all the different ins and outs and the different rules of stuff we can do and stuff that we can't do. So yeah, there's lots of different rules and regulations about it. But a really good question.
Okay, thank you for the answer, Mr. I'm really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, do you mind to give us such a closing statement, Jordan, or any final words to us to remember for this session?
Yeah, no, this has been a great experience for me. Thank you to everyone here, and thank you to Fareed again for allowing me to come speak with you all. I've gotten to know Fareed over the past year or so. He's a really great guy, and it's really cool to see all the good stuff that he's doing. So I encourage you all to keep working hard, keep doing these great things. I look forward to seeing all the good stuff that you all are going to do in the future.
We will have something for you, like a certificate of appreciation. Maybe. Yep, this is it. Hopefully,
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Awesome. That's
Totally,
great. Thank you all.